Good afternoon, East Goshen. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. It's a gray, dreary, rainy day here in Beloit, Ohio. But I'm excited to dive into scripture with you today. Thank you, as always, for joining me for our weekly devotions. I hope that they have been blessing your walk with Christ, that they've been enlightening your personal devotions. We can only cover so much in a quick video. I'd love to know, as we read through the book of Esther beginning today, what sticks out to you in your read through? What are things that are striking you, that are speaking to your situation where you are in life right now? Because none of us are in the exact same season of life. Something may be sticking out to me that you didn't really take notice of at first. And most of the insights that I provide in these videos are either things that struck me at a deep level or that are crucial to understanding the passage that we're reading through, or maybe they're just something interesting that you otherwise wouldn't know about if you didn't have some of the resources that I have accumulated over years of study. So please let me know what is speaking to you in your personal devotion time. I'd love to have a dialogue about it, maybe verses that stick out, and maybe I will be able to make a verse image and send it out on our social media pages and let you know that you have inspired me to reflect deeper on the text. So again, thank you for joining me. As I already said, we're going to be diving into the book of Esther. Esther's 10 chapters long, and so let's go ahead over this week and next week, read through it together. Break it up 5 chapters this week, 5 chapters next week, and for our purposes today, I'll only be focusing on chapters 1 and 2. So chapters 1 and 2, before we jump into the text, there's a little bit of background information that you probably need to know. So this is after the Babylonian Empire has fallen. Babylon conquers the nation of Judah and deports all the people from the country into their own empire to work and to serve the rulers. So they take everyone out of Judah. This is known as the Babylonian exile. People are scattered all around the known world, and they are taken away from their centered nation that God has given to them. And they have to wrestle with that loss in exile. They have to mourn the loss of their country. They have to mourn the loss of the temple and the presence of God amongst the people. And so, as is the case throughout human history, Babylon doesn't stay the superpower for very long. They are eventually conquered by the Persian Empire, and Persia takes over where Babylon left off. They assume control of all the land that Babylon has conquered, and the Jewish people are still scattered amongst their provinces and nations. And so that's where we find ourselves in the book of Esther. The Persian Empire is in charge. King Xerxes is the ruler of Persia, and Susa is the capital city where he resides. In these first couple chapters, we learn that King Xerxes is the kind of man who throws a 180-day party, gets so drunk that he decides to show off his beautiful wife, and calls for her to be objectified in front of a group of drunken men. Not wanting to be subjected to this kind of treatment, Queen Vashti refuses, and King Xerxes, in his drunken rage, deposes her of her royal position. He calls for all the beautiful young women in the Persian Empire to be brought before him, and he's going to conduct a beauty pageant in order to determine who will be his next bride. And that's where we're introduced to Esther, the main character in this narrative. Esther, her cousin Mordecai, who has adopted her as his own daughter after the death of her parents. He takes her in and cares for her, and she eventually wins the favor of the king, and because she is a beautiful young Jewish woman, but she keeps her nationality a secret because she's afraid of persecution. And that's where we find ourselves. The Jewish people have been subjugated to oppression. They have been subjugated to servitude. They are a low social standing in the Persian Empire. And yet, Esther rises to the position of queen. But our cousin Mordecai, on the other hand, is not so lucky. He is still in his same social standing as he was before, but we're going to focus on chapter 2, verse 22. Mordecai learns of an assassination attempt against King Xerxes. And verse 22 says, he found out about the plot and told Queen Esther, who in turn reported it to the king, giving credit to Mordecai. Mordecai could have turned his back. He's an oppressed person at the low rung of the social ladder. He's probably impoverished. He has no authority. He has no ability to move up the social ladder on his own. And so he's a foreign person in a foreign land who has been removed from his home country by these people who now rule him. And he could as easily said, forget it. King Xerxes gets what's coming to him. But he doesn't. And Mordecai, in this instance, is doing the right thing. He is, in spite of his circumstances, demonstrating the kind of character it takes to choose what is morally right. Now, I don't know about you, but there are instances in my own life where it's tough to do the right thing. It's so much easier to allow bad things to happen. It's so much easier to not get involved in the affairs of other people. It's so much easier just to let things play out as they otherwise normally would if you hadn't gotten involved. But as Christ followers, we are always called to do what is right in spite of our circumstances. And so this particular passage, the character of Mordecai, is challenging because he calls us to a higher standard, that we do what's right even when it doesn't necessarily work to our advantage, even when it's not going to change anything about our social standing. It's not going to bring anything special into our lives. We just do the right thing because God has called us to be those kind of people. So think through your life. Maybe there's an example you can think of where you had a difficult time doing the right thing, but you chose to follow God above all else. Maybe there's a decision that you have to make now. Maybe there's something you know you need to do, that it's the right thing to do, but you just had a difficult time bringing yourself to do it. How are you choosing the right thing in the moment? Are you allowing yourself to love in spite of your circumstances and to do what is right, even if it won't gain you anything in return? Kind of reflect on that. I know it's more of an abstract question today, more of an abstract point to focus on, but we kind of have to draw out of the narrative some of these important pieces. And don't forget about this passage, because unfortunately for Mordecai, the king forgets about him. Even though he uncovers an assassination attempt on his life, Mordecai is soon forgotten, and it does absolutely nothing at this point in the story for him. But he chooses to do what's right anyway. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. I hope that you will come back on Thursday. Please remember, read through chapter 5 by the end of the week, and I will see you Thursday for our next installment of the book of Esther. Have a great afternoon.